do you make of the ETH options flippening as it relates to Bitcoin?
Well, first of all, thank you, Christine. It's great to be here, and thank you for pronouncing my name so well. I mean, to be honest with you, first of all, it's interesting, right? Anything that's a first is interesting. And obviously, within this dichotomy that we have in the industry between Bitcoin and Ether, there's a lot of competition there. So it's really interesting. I have to admit that I often don't get particularly excited to talk about, the price of one asset or another, even when it's Ether or Bitcoin or their options, because I feel like it can be a distraction from the bigger question of how the industry is evolving. However, this is, to me, this flippening is interesting because it really speaks to some fundamental questions about this industry and risk, and obviously it's directly tied to the luring to the upcoming merge within Ether, right?
Maybe you can go into your thoughts on ETH compared to BTC in terms of security risks and this merge potential risk coming up that may happen in September.
Absolutely. So I think that in light of the last few months, the past 6 months, 3 months of market events, there's a growing focus on risk in the ecosystem. I think that, a lot of people, all the way from individual investors to institutional ones and regulators, are trying to understand where risk is located. At the end of the day, to me, Ether, from the very early years of the Ethereum ecosystem, there was a concern about the risk of scalability to do with the proof of work mechanism. And there's a merge that's about to happen, obviously, to introduce, a proof of stake a procedure which potentially is supposed to reduce the cost of operating the blockchain by 90%, create much more efficiency. So when people are at the end of when this flippening in the options market is happening so close to that merge, it's a very clear indication that people are excited about a reduction of this risk that has been inherent to the Ether ecosystem. Now, there's also a question hiding there. I mean, obviously, Ether and Bitcoin, to me, sometimes the dichotomy the industry tends to put between them is misleading because they're meant for very different things. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's how each of them would fare, and they're both at the end of the day. The growth feeds one another. But some people do believe that the merge might make Ether more attractive as a store of value asset. I think there's some logic to it because obviously the cost of transactions will be lower. And so in a sense, it does create, even though I said that I'm not a huge believer in talking too much about the competition between them, this might create a bit more competition as Ether, demonstrates the dynamic level of the community and really an ability to deal with kind of inherent risks that have been identified over time.
Mm-hmm. Let's pivot over to some of the crypto fallout we've seen with Three Arrows Capital, with Celsius, Voyager, and Singapore-based crypto lender Vald. Do you see continued fallout with crypto, or do you think it has bottomed out?
Great question. Wouldn't we all like to know? I think that my personal sentiment is that more or less bottomed out. It doesn't necessarily mean we won't see more of those, but I think that after the initial shock, the ecosystem has acknowledged that there are risks, and that that companies that have conducted this without giving enough attention and kind of to risk and being prudent with risk, ultimately are the most likely to fall. I keep on thinking over the past few months about the 2008 crash. It was obviously very complex. I've read The Big Short a bunch of times, and I still can't explain everything. But one theme to it was really the fact that layers over layers of complex financial products made it very complex to understand risk. Regulators couldn't fully understand the level of risk. Definitely individual, retail buyers at the time. Obviously, we're talking about the mortgage market. And I think that what we've seen in the past few months in crypto is something similar, right? I mean, there was a lot of bullishness around very exciting products like Terra, but no one, at the end of the day, really understood the level of risks, or at least the majority of people didn't, and even some very, very serious investors.
I feel like, though, people did understand the risks, but they chose not to listen to them. Because there was so much, hope, and there was so much optimism that, that could overcome the risks, but people just put a blind eye to it.
At the end of the day, is it really that different if we live in a reality where we allow ourselves to ignore risks? I mean, again, when it comes to Terra specifically, right, it was complete uncharted territory from a risk monitoring perspective. That's part of why, even today, it's still kind of hard to understand exactly what happened there, even though we have a better idea. When there's no risk monitoring involved, when there's no supervision, it's much easier to ignore risks, right? So I agree with you. I do think that there are many who didn't, and I do think there are many people who, the way a lot of us, when something is very complex, the way we decide whether something is too risky for us or not, is by looking at other people that we see as experts. And there were definitely a lot of leading experts that indicated it was a good place to put your money. Whether those experts understood the level of risk or just kind of chose to ignor it is a different question, almost psychological.
With every other algorithmic stablecoin before Terra USD, and had depegged and had this death spiral. So I feel like it was there, but I want to pivot maybe more toward Bitcoin again. What's your outlook for Bitcoin going forward?
Look, I mean, we're here, I'm here, and we're here because we're big believers in the potential of crypto, and obviously Bitcoin as the first proof of concept to make the world better, to create value, through new efficiencies, more transparency, more accessibility in financial markets, and therefore to grow in value. It's really interesting to be here today compared to 2017. 2018 during the bear market, there was actually a very legitimate question that even the most excited people about Bitcoin asked, and that is it going to be here? I think that question does not really exist in the same way here. Obviously, there are always those who may believe it might go somewhere, but even mainstream, even Main Street is pretty convinced it's here to stay. In the long run, I personally believe that it's going to increase as the industry matures some of its infrastructure and risk. And again, it all goes back to risk. Really, we have the mission now as an industry to de-risk crypto and Bitcoin, to address some fundamental infrastructural challenges like the one the SEC is proposing in its ETF rejections. And obviously that also stem out of all of these recent events. And I believe that we just hosted around 200 crypto risk and compliance leaders in our .com summit last week. The general sentiment is this is tough, but we're learning from this. The industry is optimizing, and in the long run, it's this optimization that's going to allow Bitcoin and obviously many other crypto assets
just
and the entire
30
industry
seconds,
to do well.
Chen, just want to get your quick, do you have a price outlook for Bitcoin in the short term?
Oh wow! Well, prophecy has been given to the fools. I usually don't try to avoid giving price outlooks, just because at the end of the day, no one really 100% knows. But personally, I keep on thinking. I keep in mind the prices before the drop. In the long run, in the shorter run, it's a much tougher question, and I'm afraid that I don't have a very good answer.
No worries, Chen. Thank you so much.
Fair.